Welcome back to Malaga and continuing coverage of the second Global Photonics Economic Forum. On October 7th and 8th, 2025, Optica gathered the world's most influential executives together, leading the companies and research institutions that will define the future impact of photonics. Time for one of the 7 panel sessions.
Of course, a tradition on all the Optica industry meetings is the CEO panel, moderated of course by the CEO of JENOPTIK and Chairman of the Corporate Engagement Council of Optica, Michael Lebby.
Good afternoon, everybody. We have the CEO panel just like we did last year. And let me invite the panelists on. We have Mark first from IPG, CEO of IPG Photonics. John T.C. Lee is CEO MKS. And on this side, I can see Marisa up front here. So Marisa Edmund, who's the CEO of Edmund Optics. Please come onto the stage. Jennifer Cable, who's the president of Thorlabs. And lastly, we have the CEO of JENOPTIK, which is Stefan Traeger. Please take your seats. I said in my email, whoever sits closest to me has the first question.
Apparently.
I don't know if you got the email. So this panel is about taking a look at the leadership from folks that have been successful, run large companies. And we can see as we go down the line here, the different types of companies, different types of photonics and optics products. And we've heard a theme today. There's been a bunch of themes come through. One of them is actually not just selling components, but actually putting them into systems. And we've had a lot of questions come up on that. And for the next 50 minutes, we're going to have a few questions here. The first question I typically ask the panel is, tell us who you are, but give us a little bit about who you are outside of your job. So if you were like, for example, if you were 10 years old, what did you want to be when you grew up? Or something like that. And I'll start because we just had a very inspiring talk by Michael. And part of my background is I have over 200 pairs of spectacles. So I design the optical lenses and then get somebody to cut them out. And that's why you see me wearing pentagons today, and maybe tomorrow you'll see me wearing some other shapes. But that's part of me. I like photonics and optics, and I enjoy wearing it in my home life. I guess in business life too. So first question, Stefan, you're sitting closest to me.
Apparently.
A little bit about you. What do we have? Tell us a little bit about you.
About me? Well, I guess since you started with designing glasses, what's special about me is that I come from Jena, small city in East Germany. And frankly, if you grow up in Jena, there's not much else to do other than optics. I mean, so I did polish my first lens when I was a little kid, actually, at my dad's place, at his workplace. I was fascinated by light all the time, and that's what brought me to optics at the end of the day. In my spare time, though, when I have a bit of time at hand, I do like sports, and I do like go sort of outdoors. I go running, and back to the previous talk, I like cycling. And just recently, I was actually cycling for 3 days in Tuscany. So maybe we crossed paths just recently.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. John.
I guess I'd describe myself as a recovering scientist, meaning I failed. I think I failed because when I was starting my career at Bell Labs, I'm a chemie, so I never knew what a laser did. Or does still, but we had to use a laser, and it was a dye laser, and it took a PhD to run it, and I decided that it was much too hard, so I went to the dark side in business.
So the dark side, I guess dark side is the business. Wow. Well, you've been very successful. Mark.
I guess I also transitioned to the dark side. Also, I think recovering scientist is a good one. My lab these days is the kitchen or the backyard grill. I like those things, and I play acoustic guitar in my spare time as well. So those are some things. But again, what I tell people is my espresso lab, my cooking lab, and then a little bit of creativity on the side with playing guitar.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. Marisa, come surprise us.
Great. Okay. So interesting question. And when you grow up in a family business, do you assume that you're immediately going to go and run that family business? In high school, I actually thought I wanted to be an environmentalist or a forest ranger, all sorts of interesting things, not in the business. And what I ultimately realized upon going to college and getting a business degree and whatnot is that I could probably do more impact by being in the optics industry as it related to things we could improve and sustainability in the environment. So it all ended up kind of coming full circle and more interesting. And I also enjoyed a lot of sports in college. And so there was applications there too that I could put together with optics and how we could innovate in our space. So I think as I learned more about the applications that all of us are working on, it made more sense to be in our industry and apply the things I wanted to do right there.
Thank you. Jennifer, was it the same for you or different?
It's interesting because I think Mari and I have a lot of parallels in our story. I actually had a longer time. So I'm a second generation family business owner and leader of Thorlabs. And I really rejected the family business, much to my dad's dissatisfaction perhaps, but he was always very patient. So I did not study physics, but I actually studied public health and worked in Laos for 2 years. And working in public health and seeing the global impact that you could have in that field, but then looking at what a small business and a medium-sized business could do in a local community, I realized that I could have a far greater impact through my leadership of the family business by keeping it local and by maintaining our commitments to our team. So it was probably a longer journey. I was outside of the family business for about the first 10 years of my career, but very meaningful work, very similar to public health.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, we've had a very interesting day, and Marisa showed us a piece of data earlier this morning that really got my attention. I sort of questioned it, but I'm going to ask everybody down the panel a very easy yes/no question. And Marisa showed us some data that said a large percentage of CEOs never really go and visit their customers. Now, whether I believe this or not, let's ask the experts. Yes/no answer. Stefan, do you go visit customers?
I do actually, yes.
And John, do you visit customers?
Too often.
Mark?
To apologize.
No, I do visit customers, yes.
And I assume you visit customers, Marisa.
Absolutely.
Jennifer?
Yes, and I love to see their lab snacks collections.
So there we go. 100% of our CEOs visit their customers.
I was done though. It's not always a pleasant experience, I have to say.
That's okay, but the data you have is like, okay. So now we've sorted out your CEOs, your leaders, you go visit customers. We'll start off with Stefan. What's a couple of key leadership lessons that you've sort of seen over your career? Now, it's going to be easy for a couple of you because you're just giving keynote presentations. But are there obvious things that come through as a leader in your field?
I would stay humble, first of all, and curious. Stay humble and curious, and be ready to adapt. I mean, what we see at the moment is so much change in the world, and so much sort of new stuff coming at us, and news coming at us. And I'd say be ready to adapt, and don't get too much sort of locked in a certain belief. That's one thing. And the other thing that I would always stress is, I think it's important to be able to communicate at all levels of the organization. At least for me, it's important. I think, you have to be able to communicate at board levels, but just in the boardroom, you don't really become a leader. I think you become a leader if you're able to talk with folks at the machine shop or whatever. So be able to communicate across the various parts of the organization, I think is important.
John, would you have any other?
I think I was fortunate enough early in the tenure as CEO to attend a course, and the exercise of the course was write your retirement speech. It was all new CEOs, and so it gave you this perspective of what do you want to leave behind when it's over. So as public company CEOs, our tenure is fixed, so you guys might have a little more advantage. But it will end, right? And I think one of the things I have come to believe is people are going to remember how you made them feel versus what you did. So, oh, I grew the company to this much revenue, et cetera. But in the end, people are really going to remember how did he make me feel when he was the leader. And so I try to keep that in mind, at least, and try to train our team to think like that.
That's an interesting insight. I mean, I stepped down as CEO last December, and I certainly seen some of that. So yeah, that's really interesting. Mark, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, sure. A couple of things. First would be that you really need a balance of vision and execution, because you can have the greatest strategy, but if you don't have a means to execute it, you get nowhere. So that's a piece that I've learned. And I've also learned that you can't do it all yourself. So as I talked about in my talk, my approach is to build a well-diversified leadership team that can really help to help with the task, help to get us there. And I've done that at IPG, and I feel very good about that team. And then I guess the other piece is of course you have to be adaptable, because the environment is constantly changing.
Yeah, that seems to be a common theme. I mean, how do leaders become agile? But maybe we'll save that for another question. But Marisa, do you have any? I mean, you gave a couple of really interesting insights, like partnering. I mean, do you want to add to a couple of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. So incredibly important to partner. I believe our success is based on the strength of our networks and the people we know and collaborate with. That's been an incredibly important part of our company and thousands of vendors that we're involved with and partners around the world. So I'd say that's certainly one piece. And building on what you're saying around adaptability, I also think it's important to have the skills and the fortitude to be able to pivot. When I started running our board in early 2000, one of our first board members, he said to me, "I'm going to teach you how to kill puppies." And it was this shocking statement. And I didn't know how to take it. And I thought it was a horrible analogy. But we eventually got to more of a rip the Band-Aid off type situation, which is, as you're headed down a certain path, if it's not working out, you have to rip that Band-Aid off and pivot and do something else. You can easily have 100 R&D projects and all these different things. You have to know what's working, and you have to be able to make those tough decisions and pivot when you've gone down a path that maybe isn't getting you where you want to go. And get the team back on course, right? That ability to focus and make the tough decisions.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Yeah, so I was thinking about actually the presentation Mark gave about building a leadership team and some of the lessons I learned around that. And I think the first was really learning to both trust and empower my leadership team. So really, placing that trust in them and then allowing them to have the latitude to make decisions on their own and really own their areas of the business. And then kind of the counterbalance to that, another critical lesson was really and this is a principle of lean manufacturing, to go and see. So that I had to trust my team, I had to empower them, but also if there was an area of the business that I was curious about, or I was concerned about, or there were some inklings that things weren't quite going the way I'd hoped, to go and see. And typically you'd uncover so much more than you could from kind of a polished report or from just hearing from the leadership of that area. So I think that also extends to customers. When you go and see, when you directly listen to the customers, see how they're using your product, you learn so much more than you could from a market report, for example.
Thank you. Well, a couple of the answers there sort of touched on the word agility. And so, assuming I'm sitting in the audience and I'm wondering, I'm looking at 5 leaders here around large corporations, and you're measured by your corporate success, there's metrics you have. But how do you navigate in today's environment? I know it has come up in a number of talks today. How do you navigate by being so agile that you can work through all the different things that get thrown at you, whether it's supply chain issues or visa issues, or even, I think tariffs were mentioned this morning. As a leader, how do you have a secret sauce to navigate this, or is it just being so nimble that you can move and pivot very quickly? Stefan?
Well, I once heard this term, cautious optimism, I suppose. So at least that's my recipe. I don't know, but I'll try to stay optimistic and mix a bit of caution into it. Of course, I mean, don't get reckless, I suppose, but trying to see the opportunity in change. I think that's at least how I try to manage the team through choppy waters at the moment.
And you find that because, I mean, everybody here has distribution and manufacturing plants in many different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And so you're not just running a company in one country, you're running an international corporation.
Yeah.
And so things are changing quickly, whether it's a region or a country. I mean, your cautious optimism, do you feel that's a good way to look at it? Be conservative, be careful, but always look for opportunities?
I guess we'll find out. but no, I do believe so, because I mean, at the end of the day, you know, if you put your head in the sand, you certainly cannot see the future. That's for sure. So I'll try to, at least that's what I do. I'll try to communicate to everybody within the company. Come on, guys. I mean, yeah, it's tough, but if we roll up our sleeves, and you know, we can manage, and we continue to be a success.
Thank you, John.
And by the way, you are right. The way you convey the message might be different in China, in the US, or in America, and in Europe, right? The way to convey it is different, but the fundamental message, I think, should be the same still.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, I do that as well. I think it's very helpful. I think maybe to distill it down, I think it's about keeping calm and also helping the rest of the team separate what's really important and what's noise. I think everybody can panic. We've talked about it in the past, we had a ransomware event. 40 out of 60 factories were down for 4 weeks. That's a pretty bad situation. The factories couldn't run because you couldn't trust the computers. So we still had to make stuff. So back to paper. We had to receive from our suppliers because we didn't want them to stop. So there's a lot of things going on for the whole entire country. The board wants to know what's going on every day. And so I think as a leader, I think keeping calm so that the rest of the team can say, okay, at least he looks calm. And then you can start thinking about, okay, there's a problem, solve that. There's this problem, let's solve that. I think that built a culture of resiliency to emergencies. And I think if I look at our team now versus some of the same people 5 years ago or 10 years ago, they are much more resilient. When something happens like tariffs changing every day, yep, you just go to it, right? And that resiliency, I think, is because it's a problem, just like any other problem. Just stay calm, solve the problem. That's, I think, been helpful. And so it's a style, but I think if the leader is emotional and swearing, and because it's a bad situation, I think that stress just multiplies as you go down the chain.
It's like an engineer's approach. I mean,
Yeah.
my wife is a musician, so she says, you're an engineer, just figure it out. Right?
Yeah.
So Mark, you got the same sort of approach when you look at leadership?
Yeah, so a couple of things for me. I talked about the fact that, you know, there's an agility that I was moving from, which is a hub and spoke, founder-led, to the team-led approach, and being able to maintain that kind of agility, because you do have a agility when there's a single central figure, but it's hard to scale the reaction. But the company, IPG, has done some amazing things over the last couple of years. You know, obviously there was the Russia-Ukraine war when that started. Then there was a large operation in Russia that was IPG, and that was sanctioned. And so the teams had to get out and actually move all of the manufacturing to Germany, to Poland, and Italy. And they did that without a hitch. So no customer impact. We were able to move. And in fact, I had to, sell off the sanctioned organization, in my first couple of quarters. And now as we've come and we're, teaching each other how to be a team-led organization, where, we have ownership of each of the key areas, and we have a lot of collaboration between the team. And so now we've approached like the tariff pieces, right? As that came up, we approached it as a team, as John said, with a very calm approach, and we looked at how to do that. And that, we used some of the practiced pieces that were there from the past, but be able to engage those. And so we were able to move manufacturing between the US and Europe quite quickly and be able to minimize the tariffs. And so the team's done a wonderful job of being able to do that. And so it's kind of that shift in agility, but being able to maintain those core pieces.
And Marisa, you've got, I think it's here, 19 global locations. So you're distributed all over the world. I mean, how do you look at this in terms from an agility standpoint?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one of the things we do and do rather well is we talk about delegation of authority, and we set up teams around the world who have a certain amount of authority to make decisions and make them very quickly, given any issue. So for example, with tariffs, we put together a global tariff scrum team. And for a while, they were meeting every single day, making about decisions, pricing on the website, and then communicating that back out. So I think, again, when you can take some of the hierarchy out and you can empower teams and empower regional leaders, things can happen a lot faster. They have to strengthen that muscle. They have to have consistent issues that they're tackling so that they get comfortable with it. They get comfortable with communicating out what has happened to the rest of the global organization so that everybody understands the change. And then one of the examples I had given you, Michael, yesterday when we were speaking was, again, relying on your network is really important. When things like this happen, or again, you need to pivot or make an adaptable decision. For example, when COVID hit, we were doing production in Singapore. As many of you know, staff oftentimes comes from Malaysia, and that border got shut down overnight. So half of our workforce could not get to Singapore. Instead, we immediately contacted our friends at SHOT, who had a facility in Penang, and we asked if we could rent space in their facility. And within 3 weeks, we were back up and running. We had transferred equipment from Singapore. We'd gotten the ability to do that. Our employees moved from where they were in Malaysia up to Penang, and we were back in business. But having those networks and that relationship already intact when you need it is pretty critical.
Thank you. Well, when I look at Thorlabs, Jennifer, first thing I think about is the lab snacks, because whenever you go into any area, there's always Thorlabs lab snacks all lying around somewhere. But you have over 20,000 different products. Your company was built on a fast delivery schedule.
Yep.
So fast means agile.
Mm-hmm.
So how does agile apply to you and your corporate strategy to navigate these things?
So it's interesting that you connect it back to that service and that delivery level, because often it actually means the opposite. So that sometimes I've noticed that we struggle with agility because we don't want to break the mothership, right? We don't want to break that kind of core function that we've built. So one thing that we've been working on a lot as a team is figuring out where we can innovate, where we can be agile, while not disrupting the kind of core promise to our customers and the core commitments of our business. So it's a balancing act. I would say that having kind of the lodestar in mind, which is that same day order processing, same day delivery, while adding on things like our large industrial customers that don't need same day delivery, but they need a predictable order delivery schedule. So adding on that complexity to the business and being agile enough to take that on while not disrupting the core of the business. That's been our challenge. And I think we've been successful at it.
Okay, thank you. Well, as I looked down through all your companies, all of you at certain times have made a number of acquisitions. So I'm not here for you to go into the details, but I mean, from your standpoint, how do you think about acquisitions? Because it looks like every one of you has done an acquisition every year or every 2 years to build your corporation with the different products and services. Especially Marisa and Jennifer, there's been a lot of acquisitions there. But Stefan, I mean, how do you think about acquisitions?
Mm-hmm. I think everybody knows that most acquisitions fail based on, if they fail, on chemistry, on relations. Yet it always happens. Everybody's kind of like aware of it, but we all have the risk to fall into that trap. My thinking about acquisitions is always think post-merger. I think post-merger is really, really, really important. And to me, there is no kind of like standard playbook, if that makes sense. I think every acquisition is different. Every culture of companies coming together is different. Every company is different. So I would say, for me at least, what served me well over the years has been to really step by step, go into it, do the diligence in terms of cultural diligence, and make sure that post-merger, sometimes you want to go in hard and fast and change things quickly, and sometimes you want to give it time, and sometimes you want to really explore what is the core of what you just acquired or sold. So I guess for me that's important. Every acquisition is different. Every company culture is somewhat different, and be mindful, be respectful of that, to not stumble over your feet afterwards in a post-merger scenario.
Yeah, thank you. John?
Yeah, I think, well, it's basic, but you certainly have to have a reason for it. What's the strategy? And I think we've done over 20 acquisitions over our life. At first it was, let's surround everything around a vacuum chamber that's critical. Okay, so then it was very easy to understand. And that drove the acquisition roadmap. And then we said, let's expand into packaging as well as semiconductors. And so that drove the next set of acquisitions. I would say we have all our pillars now, the main pillars, but there's still a lot of tuck-ins available. And I think the only thing that's probably changed that I've been public with is the bar for acquisitions now within our own, company is much higher. And it's higher because we have done a lot of big bets with organic bets, hiring 100 engineers for something that won't pay off for 3 years. Because of size, we're able to do that, and as a company, we took the courage and the leap to do that. And we were successful enough times now that when an acquisition comes in, an opportunity, if the general manager says, this is a great idea, I said, well, instead of paying $100 million for that company, what if I gave you 10? Could you get there almost as fast? And if you can, let's go do that. So that's what I mean by the bar is higher now. Or we just buy it because, well, we're going to get bigger faster. Well, we can almost get bigger faster sometimes doing it organically because you're starting to push the boundaries of, there aren't a lot of companies that are perfect, right, in terms of acquisitions. So that'd be the only nuance I'd say from our strategy.
Interesting. Mark?
Yeah, for us, so first of all, it was to build a strategy, a strategic plan. Where are the key places for us? And, we have great areas to invest in organically, but then there's the opportunity for tuck-in acquisitions that can get us there faster or can give us, some markets alongside that can allow us to grow. So we see real opportunities to do that. And part of what we've done is actually to build an acquisition engine, let's say. So, we did an acquisition at the end of last year, a company called Clean Laser. I mentioned it in my talk. And one of the things, it wasn't a huge acquisition, but we used that to actually build the structure around it. Actually, something that I learned under John's tutelage when I was at MKS is we took a structured approach and really to the integration with every function participating and being able to link up with the team in due diligence, but also in the, after acquisition to make sure that the integration goes smoothly, that the culture is working. And I should have mentioned in the beginning, you also have to make sure that the culture is going to fit, as Stefan said. But if that's all working, then you actually have to actively do it. You can't just stand back. You have to actively work with the team to do the integration and get the value that you want out of that and make them part of the company. And that's what we've done. And now, we have a team that's doing that. And when we did the acquisition, we assigned somebody to be the acquisition leader, took them out of their job and said, that's your job now to run that part of the business.
Got it.
Yeah.
So a lot of hands on there. I guess that's the same for you, Marisa.
Yeah. And I think something that's different at a privately held family company is when you talk about acquisitions, you are literally talking about investing your family's wealth and their money into something else. And so you can't gamble with that, right? It's just too critical. So one of the things we really look at is, will it accelerate our tech roadmap? And if so, by how much? And then likewise, back to the first point is, if you took that money and say it's a $5 million acquisition or a smaller one, and you invested it in yourself, could you do more? Could you answer more customer needs? Could you grow something else? Or could you instead do that same type of technology, and how long would it take? So that's the first question. Could you do it better, or are they really leading the charge? Can you accelerate? And then I also think one thing we think about that a lot of people don't is, what are the consequences once you've purchased it, right? So we can all read a P&L. We can all see, they have good cash flows. It's going to be accretive. When will it pay back? We can get to those statistics pretty quickly. But But we have a thing we look at, and that is I have a tendency to Edmundize M&As. And that is they say, oh, Mari, you're going to go in. They're going to have great benefits. They're going to participate in Spirit Week. You're going to have a nice cafeteria. You're going to want to make all these changes once you get in and you've integrated the cultures and you've made it an Edmund facility. So sometimes we have to step back and say, if we're going to make those changes, once we do an acquisition, will it still be profitable? Can we afford to have it come up to what is essentially an Edmund standard of what our factories should look like? And so that's another interesting thing that we have to take into account.
Yeah, that's could be a big overhead. Yeah. And Jennifer, about your strategy for acquisitions.
I think many of the similar tests that the other folks on the panel have mentioned, we also do. We typically look at the technology sides, the products that they have or the unique manufacturing that they offer, and then the team itself. And I'll say sometimes the value of the team and the individuals on the team outweighs the technology. That really adding them to our team, adding them to our technical talent is worth it. I probably would never say the same about technology. So I would sometimes say, all right, maybe the technology isn't a perfect fit, but the team is. If the technology is a perfect fit, but the team isn't, we're not going to go forward with that acquisition. So I really think that's critical, that they're folks that we want to work with, that they'll fit well, they'll collaborate well with their colleagues, and they'll help us extend the unique culture we've created and not ultimately, not fit and not align with it. So that's very critical.
All right, thank you. Well, let's change course a little bit. I'm going to ask a question now where I don't know the answer. So, and the question I always ask CEO panels is AI. Now, generally, a lot of the panels are optical comms or optical networking folks or data center type folks. But in this panel, we don't have those folks. We have optical components, optical systems, photonics, we have measurement equipment. So it's not really an optical comms networking panel. So my question is, I always ask the question, is there an AI bubble? But more so, how does AI really affect your business? Do you expect it to affect your business? Stefan?
I would say to the later part of the question, yes, it does affect the business, and I expect it to affect it going forward. In particular, obviously, in administrative processes, and cutting back on the huge bureaucracy in our company. Our company is way too bureaucratic in many ways. We have way too much red tape, and I have high hopes that AI can help us to cut back on the red tape in the organization. Now, is it a bubble? I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. I flip-flop here. Sometimes I think it's not actually new. It's like, deep learning algorithms are around ever since. And I mean, we do some kind of like fancy traffic control stuff, cameras. If you speed on the Autobahn or whatever, highway, then you get flashed. It could be us. And we read number plates with deep learning algorithms ever since. So it's not very new. But I think the computer power that drives the thing now. So maybe it is a revolution, but I'm not quite sure. It's a bubble. Is it a bubble? No, I don't think so. A bubble would burst at some point. So I think AI is here to stay. And if we're smart enough, it can help us make our companies better.
Got it. John?
Yeah, similar. So inside MKS, we're using AI in controlled projects.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, everybody just went out to the web and started asking questions that told everybody what our IP was. So we stopped that, and now it's more structured. And we're going to get some value out of it. Translation of product manuals, for instance. Research and finding new molecules. So a little deeper than that. But I think going back to the bigger question, is it a bubble? Just like my talk last year, we bought Aditech for packaging of chips, and we were always into the making of chips. And we said, this is about supporting and being foundational to Moore's Law, because Moore's Law is now more than just a chip. It's the packaging and putting chips together. And when we decided to buy Aditech, the board's decision and my pitch, AI wasn't a word then. So we decided to do that because we already saw the trend of packaging chips together. And then AI just kind of put an exclamation point on it. So you and I both lived through the dot-com bubble. A lot of you lived through the dot-com. We're a lot older now, right? it was a bubble from a valuation standpoint, but not from a world's need of telecom, bandwidth growth, et cetera. So that all happened, right? 25 years later, we have a lot more bandwidth. We have a lot more companies doing it. It's just that the valuation was a bubble. And I think that's the worry that investors have today is the valuation. Is NVIDIA worth $4 trillion, right? It doesn't mean AI is not going to be useful because it's just, as I said in the talk last year, just the next big thing in a series of big things, all driven by Moore's Law. Moore's Law is the big thing, and that will continue. So I think AI, to Stefan's point, large language models, those concepts existed 20 years ago. It's just that now you can actually implement it because the chips are cheap enough. So the valuation bubble, your guess is as good as mine, but the need for the technology and the use of the technology, I don't think that's a bubble.
Great, no, good answer. Mark, how do you
I would say, very similar in terms of the bubble. We'll have to see, but it's certainly AI is making changes that are here to stay. Some of what I talked about today, industry and factory 4.0, 2.0, when you talk about adaptive factories and such, certainly AI is driving some of what's happening there, and those are going to be secular trends that are going to continue to advance. As I look at our applications teams and being able to use AI to predictably find the right parameters, for example, those are going to be key pieces. But the whole aspect of running factories is going to all push towards automation, and that automation is going to be driven by AI for sure. And we'll see it in other areas too, in medicine, and there's just big secular trends that are going to continue to drive, no matter what happens to that valuation bubble, whether that continues or not. The secular trends will continue to drive growth for all of us, I think.
And in terms of Marisa, I think you said in your website 34,000 products, a one-stop shop. I'm trying to imagine how AI. I'm sure it can actually help your business, but I'm intrigued to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can give you a couple more examples. So again, when you're managing 34,000 products across 9 distribution centers and all the different currencies and whatnot, it's incredibly hard to manage that inventory at that level. It's our largest investment as a company. So we actually just adopted some new software we're going to be implementing in the next 2 weeks, and that is an AI-based software that helps you manage those types of global logistics to understand not unlike what Amazon does, but where the products need to be around the world. How much do you need in inventory based on your service goals? So maybe your service goal is 95% in stock of your A products. This software will help you model and predict then how that works and enable you to work with your partners and vendors faster to get those products on the shelf. Likewise, a lot of my life has been spent in marketing and certainly on the catalog distribution side and trying to understand if you're going to mail 4 million catalogs, who do you mail them to? How do you mail them? That is all data science. We started with commingled databases back in early 2000 from 3,000 to 10,000 different attributes to figure that out, from titles to locations to zip codes to how often you're buying, magazines you're subscribed to. So now AI has really reinvented how you can do marketing, not just from content, which a lot of us use it for, but also in the data analytics field of looking at targeted marketing and distribution of marketing. So there's some really exciting innovations happening there, and hopefully it makes your inboxes and your experience on a lot of different websites much better in the future and able to predict what you're most likely to be interested in.
Cool. So I'm hesitant to call it a bubble, given that we've benefited directly from that bubble. So certainly reminiscent of the .com bubble era, especially when I chat with my dad about the experiences he had in the late 90s and early 2000s. So we've certainly seen these types of dynamics before in our industry and for Thorlabs. So we're trying not to bet that demand sticks around in the next few years in the same way. But we do believe that, some of these tools can be very transformational, as the other panelists have shared. The other thing I would say is the power to automate workflows using agentic AI and really thinking about how do we make sure that our teams are spending their time on the most value-added activities, that they're not, reading a lot of marketing emails that they maybe didn't need to read, but that we have agents on top of that can help them with their their workflows. And then also, I think many of us are dealing with a critical need for skilled technicians, skilled talent. So in areas where we can add AI tools or agentic AI tools that can supplement skilled technicians and skilled workforce, I think that can be really powerful. I do want to just make one last note, which is the tremendous environmental consequences of these tools. So we have a sustainability roadmap as a company, and I am conscious of the fact that, every time we use these tools, we're part of something that's contributing to diminishing the likelihood that we're able to execute that sustainability roadmap. So really trying to encourage my teams to use these tools mindfully and use them in a way that reduces waste.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a completely different question, but it's the same question as I asked last year. And it's all about, as a leader of a large corporation, an international large corporation, how do you give back to the industry? How do you give back to the new workforce? I mean, a couple of these things came up earlier today in some keynote talks. I mean, does your company do mentoring? Does it really help bring in new engineers and scientists and optics and photonics folks? I mean, I don't know the answer, but Stefan.
Yeah, we do that. I mean, we in Germany have a certain education system, apprentice system, which we found very attractive, and so we educate young people and try to get them into our industry. We sponsor research, do things like that. And yeah, by and large, trying to be more visible as an industry. I think the problem we have, and I'm going to talk about it to some extent tomorrow, but the problem we have as an industry is we're not very visible, right? I mean, for the public, well, photonics sounds fancy, but what is that actually, right? And for a politician, they don't get really brownie points for helping the photonics industry. I mean, we're not the car industry or something like that. So trying to explain why it's important and why we matter, actually, I think is something that I'll try to do in giving back to society to some extent.
I'm really glad to hear it. I mean, at one point, I ran a trade association on optoelectronics in the US, and the hardest part of that job was like members were from many different industries. And so how do you look at the photonics and optics and call that an industry? It's actually quite difficult to do, but let's go back to the original question, John.
Yeah, I spend a fair amount of time, of my time, talking to our interns. So these are summer students, 6-month co-op students, every quarter. And it's kind of like path to CEO. How do you get there? They ask questions, basically. So that's one small thing. But I think a bigger thing is when we started writing some books to train our own people about our markets. The first one we did was semiconductor manufacturing. So we were in semiconductor manufacturing, but our folks were making hardware. And they were 3 steps removed from actually making the chip. And maybe because my background came from chip making, I said, you should understand how the process works and where we fit, just so we can educate our own employees. And so as a part of our office of the CTO, 10 CTOs in the company, we wrote a book. And then we said, okay, we train our folks on it. And then we made it free to the industry. So it's on our website. You can download it. First half is literally, if you're a grad student, you can learn how chips are made. It's a second edition now because it changes. Second half is MKS sales. Like, these are the products that we make that go into it. That's fine. Then we bought Newport. And we bought Electroscientific Industries, and we bought Aditech. So when we bought Newport, we said, we have to educate the other half of our company that's not Newport about Newport, and vice versa. We already wrote the semi book, the Newport side. So we wrote another book. It's Photonics. It's also free. You can download it. We bought Aditech. We wrote another book on packaging because we had to educate the other 2/3 of the company on what this third did, and vice versa. So in terms of, we had a debate. Should we make this free? It was a lot of work, a lot of IP, keep it, internal. We said, no, it's part of our obligation to the industries that we're in. It's also, by the way, a recruiting mechanism. So it's not totally it's a little self-serving. But the idea here is, why not share that? because it will benefit everybody in the industry.
And so I think the obvious question to Mark is, because you used to work at MKS, is have you started books?
I was responsible for helping write one of those books, so I've done that once in my career so far, along with Jim Kafka. At IPG, so a couple things. So just like John, we have an extensive internship program that we're working to make more structured, but we do bring a lot of interns in, and that's an important way to give exposure of what the company does and gets a chance to, you know, give people some areas that they can understand and then go back to school and potentially join us later. So that's a very good piece, and we're very involved in the local community, the local colleges that we're with. And then other pieces, I've very much believe in mentoring. I've always mentored people within my organizations, and we're doing that now as we're working to build an emerging leaders program within the company. That's something actually we did at MKS as well, and I think that's a very important way to get people to the next level and to start having them interact with each other. There's really some real advantages of doing that, and so we'll be working on those areas. And then the other pieces, we give back to the community locally as well. So we donate to, some of the local charities and areas that we can give back to the communities as well. And we do that here, and also we do it in the US and in Europe.
Oh, excellent. And Marisa?
Yeah, so outreach and education is a big part of our legacy. So one thing we started 15 years ago was actually we still own the name Edmund Scientific, so we developed an entire outreach division. So we have a full-time outreach coordinator, and her goal is to do two things. First off, to go out in the community and bring schools to us, to go to schools with teams on the outreach. So usually 10 to 15 of our employees are going to a variety of events throughout the year, but they also assemble and make outreach kits. So it could be a laser mirror type of application, or build this or build that, or use something with your smartphone. So they have all these great kits. They go out. We educate several thousand students a year. We also go to things like Girls Inc. We go to science camps, a lot of things at universities and within academia. And so our outreach team, while they're not doing it full time, has about 60 volunteers on it. So it's also a neat outlet for some of our employees who may enjoy working with children, who may enjoy education, and who also just love optics and are passionate about it, to get out in the community, share their skills. So we're doing that during work days, whenever those events take place. So I think that's a really fun and exciting way to do it.
Awesome. Similarly, we have a photonics education team. So we have everything from our mobile photonics lab, which I think some folks have seen at previous Photonics Wests. So it's an outfitted van that you can walk through, and it gives folks the experience of being in a laser lab, playing with optics, aligning optics, and really seeing how light and hardware interact and the impact that can have on your daily life. So really cool to start seeing folks make that connection. And that really is for the general public, all the way through undergraduate and graduate students. So we go to technical universities to try to attract students into photonics programs, or let's say imaging technology master's programs. So the idea is we really want to grow the photonics community, because those are future Thorlabs customers. So that's really our passion. And then when we think about internally, we also bring a similar passion to the work we do with our own teams. So we have 2 photonics courses. They're, I think, around 20 hours, 25 hours each. And the idea is we have a technical track and a non-technical track. The technical track are really for folks that come with an engineering background or a scientific background, but don't know photonics, right? Have never worked in a laser lab. So it gives them that hands-on experience, but at a kind of assuming they have some science basics. And then the non-technical track is really for everyone, folks that work in our machine shop, our call center representative. So really, we try to cover everyone within the company. Our team in Europe is actually slightly ahead. So they've gotten through the entire 500-person team in Germany, and we're slowly working through the 1,000 folks that work in New Jersey. So I'm really excited, and it does help people to connect what they do day to day with the mission of the company. So very powerful there.
Yeah, excellent. We're down to a couple of minutes here, so I haven't been asking the audience any questions, but I probably should. Are any obvious questions to come up? This panel hasn't been that good that you don't have any questions. Is there one, Jose?
Yes, there is
I-
one.
I can't see from here.
Hello, I'm Barbara Boades from JENOPTIK. I thought I wanted to ask about the adoption of AI in your companies, but you asked that question already. Maybe my question goes more into the exact, have you adopt AI as a custom support for your sales team?
Anybody like to answer that one?
We have not.
Not yet. Not yet. That's
Not yet. All right.
Yeah.
There's two negatives. Mark?
There's work going on in that area. It's certainly an area that will be important for customer support, but we haven't rolled it out in any large amount.
Yes, so we have an AI chat agent that we use in our customer service. So that's been pretty effective. And then I think there's even a great example here, but I'm seeing a lot more on the optical design and accelerating optical designs through the use of AI, and then including in that what stock products or products available from some of the vendors in this room are immediately available to put into that design and make it manufacturable.
So I'll be the lone dissenter. I am very passionate about picking up the phone and talking to a human being and starting a chat and talking with a human being. So that's critical. So we aren't using these tools in customer-facing applications. I'm probably just too much of a Luddite to adopt that early on, but certainly looking at it in terms of our internal workflows.
All right, let me just double check with Jose. Are we run out of time? Right on time. Well, why don't we just thank the panel for a most interesting discussion today.
Like,
Thank you, everybody.